Alright guys, I'm going to go over the first couple steps for the Go box, which the end result is going to look like this. So our first step wood selection. Now we want cherry, so I'm going to walk over to the cherry, grab a tape measure. Now I want my box to have some cool, interesting grain. So maybe I'm looking for something like this. You know, this is an interesting grain pattern. If it doesn't matter to you, then just grab whatever board's going to work. So we're looking for something that is at least 17 inches long and at least, we'll say, 2 inches wide. And we also want to make sure that it's a full 4/4 thickness. So we want to avoid pieces like that because we won't be able to get the full thickness out of it. You know, something like that we want to avoid. Now, I like the look of this, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this. So if I come over here to the miter station, I'm going to mark out 17.5, give myself a little bit of wiggle room. Now, that's my scrap side. I'm going to put the board I'm not using back on the wood sack. Next, I'm going to joint an edge. This side looks a little smoother, so I'm going to keep it against the fence. Nice and tight against the fence. Alright, I've jointed an edge. Now I need to rip this to 1 3/4 inches. I'm going to go over to the table saw, set my blade height, and I want 1 3/4 inches. So that measurement is to the end of this sawtooth. So we're going from the fence to the corner of the tooth. When I lock the fence down, it's going to shift a little bit, so I accounted for that. So you can see I'm at exactly 1 3/4 inches. Jointed side against the fence. Nice and tight against the fence. Like this. Goes back on the wood pile for someone else to use. Alright, now we're going to resaw this piece. Resaw just means rather than plane it down to thickness, we're going to split it in half and be able to use both sides of the board. Now the plans, which I'm going to check, will tell you exactly how much we want to set our resort. So it calls for a fat 7/16 or 29/64. So I go over here to the table saw fence. I'm looking for a fat 7/16. 7/16 is right under a 1/2 inch. Now I will come in and eyeball, and we should be pretty much split right down the middle, because that's the purpose. We want two even pieces after we run this through. Alright, so to set up the resaw, I've got the fence set where I want it. I need to raise the blade height. We want to be able to go through this entire thing. So I've got the blade height set higher than the wood stood on its end. Next we're going to use a feather board. We want to make sure we're off here. Now when we set up our feather board, we don't want to set it up here where it's going to pinch the blade. We want to set it behind the blade, tight against our wood. So I'm going to give it a little bit of preload. I'm going to switch this on. Now this is tight. Alright. Now I'm going to do one last check just to make sure. Eyeball it. We're right down the middle. Looks like I'm good. So now I'm going to resaw it. I've got my push stick. You're definitely going to want a push stick for this. Alright, now I've got two equally sized pieces. Something I forgot to mention before I cut, I should have marked my piece so I know how they go together when I go back after sanding. Alright, so I've got two more or less equally sized pieces. Alright, now the next step calls for resanding or sanding our resaw cut. So we want the inside of our cut, aka this part, we want to sand this until the saw blade marks are gone. These are burn marks. We want to get rid of these. You can kind of see saw blade marks. We want to get rid of these. So I'm going to turn the dust extractor on. Set our height. We want to just barely be able to go under here with a little bit of pressure. Step 1, 2, 3. Still need to keep going. Quarter turn. Alright, we've gotten rid of all our burn marks, our saw marks. Overall, it looks pretty good. Now we need to flip it, sand this, until we get to 3/8. So 3/8 is between 1/2 and 1/4. I've got about a 1/16 I need to take off. Nope. We're just barely over. I'm going to do about 1/8 of a turn. Probably my last pass. at 3/8. We go 1, 2. I'm gonna wait 10 seconds. Alright, so we've got our 2 pieces of wood that we resawed. We still have our orientation because we marked our edge. We know that these are outside faces. We know that this was an inside face. Alright, next we need to join an edge. I'm going to make sure that I joint the bottom of each of these. So I'm going to mark which side I'm joining. I want to keep it tight to the fence. So I've got my bottoms that I jointed. I'm going to put an X on them again. Next step, we're going to rip to our final height, which is 1.5 inches. We're going to take our featherboard off, lower our blade height, and we want 1.5 inches. You can see my tooth is right on the 1.5 inch mark. Now, jointed side against the fence. You see we got a nice tight joint. Jointed side against the fence. Throw your scrap away.